Hey guys, I'm Donnie, and today we're going to show you how to make awesome aura or key energy effects similar to what you saw in Dragon Ball Z Light of Hope in scenes like this and like this. Alright, so let's just get straight to it. Step one is going to be using the camera tracker to track your footage in After Effects. If you're not already familiar with how to use that, check out the tutorial video we did, and you can find the video for that in the description below. And if you don't need to check that out, let's just go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so now that we've hopped into After Effects, let's just get straight to it. First off, I'm going to start off with letting you guys know what plugins you're going to need. You're going to need video co-pilot effects such as heat distortion, twitch, and we're going to be using some assets from Action Essentials. And then we're also going to be including some pre-rendered Krakatoa Particles, which are basically these awesome organic, flowy energy particles that will kind of simulate energy radiating off and around trunks. You can actually get a download of those for free in the link below down in the description. And then lastly, Red Giant Universe Camera Shake. As an alternative for free, if you guys are just bare bones, I'll also include a link to the VFXBro camera preset camera shake effects, which we'll get into all that as we get along. So let's just get right into it. So step number one is we're going to duplicate our layer. I'll provide a link as well for the footage in the description. But yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate that clip. We're going to turn off that top duplicated layer for now, and we're going to camera track the bottom. Alright, so this takes just a few minutes depending on how long your clip is or how big of resolution your clip is. This is a 4K clip, so it will probably take a couple minutes, so I'm just going to jump right ahead to when it's done. Alright, so it finished. Now that that's finished tracking, let's have it create a camera. So before we get started with this actual After Effects, I would like to describe how we shot this and how practical effects really make the world of difference when doing any visual effects, because you want to combine the two anytime you can. So as we play through this, you'll see that there's already a little bit of sand blowing up around Trunks' knees. You'll see that the wind is blowing on Trunks. And we did get really lucky that day. It was extremely windy. A storm was coming through, so it was kind of a perfect storm, no pun intended. But most importantly, we had a leaf blower hitting Trunks right in the chest and like on his loose shirt and his hair with it flapping in the wind. It really sells that he has energy coming off of him. So before you do any effects, I highly encourage you do something like that. You don't necessarily have to have a leaf blower. You could have a fan. You could actually fan someone with something maybe even as simple as cardboard out of frame. It's all about getting creative with what you have, but that's step number one. All right, so now once you do that, let's start actually doing the fun stuff and getting into the effects. All right, so first things first. What we did is we used the camera tracker on that bottom clip. That clip, this is just a practice for me. I always like having an untouched version of anything that I use a camera tracker for. So I want to totally I want to turn off this clip by just turning off the eye icon, and we're going to turn on and activate that second duplicated layer. So what we're going to do now is duplicate again, and we are actually going to as you see Trunks is like moving and powering up. What we're going to do is we're going to crudely roto brush around Trunks so we can separate him from this layer. So you want to select this icon up here, and you want to double click your duplicated layer. And I just like to find the most ideal frame, which is typically somewhere in the center of the clip, to start roto brushing. So this is a little bit of a tedious process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to speed ramp this so you guys don't have to sit with me for 20 minutes doing this. And as an issue comes up, I'll specifically stop there and address it. Now, obviously, this isn't fast forward right now. So you can tell clearly this isn't a roto brush tutorial. I could get into a lot of the minutia and the details of how to clean this up perfectly. And I probably will do that at some point in another tutorial. But again, this is just, I want you guys to get the basic idea, and there's so many other tutorials online already that cover this pretty well. So as you can see, I'm just really trying to show you in the fastest way possible how to do this so we can keep moving on to the meat and bones of this effect. Is meat and bones even an expression? I think I might have just either butchered one or made that up. Really not sure. Meat and potatoes. Is that it? Meat and potatoes. That's the expression, right? I don't know. I don't know. So, now that we've finished, before we do anything, we need to come down here to this icon and hit freeze. So I'm going to jump ahead once this is finished and we'll continue the tutorial. Alright, cool. So now that that's finished rotoing, let's keep it moving. Alright, so first off, actually, just to describe why we're doing this is we rotoed that layer so we can composite in layers of energy and debris behind and in front of Trunks, so it's not all just like super flat right in front of him and obviously fake. This kind of helps us give some depth and perspective to the scene. Alright, so let's start adding some of our assets to the shot. First off, we're going to start including the Krakatoa Particles. These are pretty awesome. Again, they're in the description below. And you can see here, this kind of has like a sandy particle like kind of feel to it. You can clearly see there's wind spinning it all around. So let's use that one right off the bat. All right, so first off, what we're going to do is go to that bottom layer that has the camera tracker, and we are going to decide where we want to place our new layer. We're going to select right above his knees here, and we're going to right click, create solid. Alright, so it looks pretty silly, but let's just give this a second. So as we scrub through here, you can see that that square is tracking right where we need our Krakatoa effect to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our solid, go to Krakatoa, and we're going to drag that down here, hit Alt, and let go. And now you can see that layer is replacing that that shape in 3D space in the exact same position. So still doesn't look right, obviously. So let's scale this down. Let's move it up a little bit. Make sure you use the arrows here when you're moving the positioning, because if not, you're going to throw off the 3D space like crazy. So make sure you always do that. So let's center it up here. Maybe scale it. You don't have to keep it the exact proportions. What I like to do anytime I use kind of a stock effect is just distort it a little bit so it feels unique to the scene. So I like to scale it up, say here. It also makes this feel a little more like the energy is going up vertically as opposed to horizontally. And the next step is we're going to mask this out so it's not some crazy looking square. By default, I use the Roto Bezier tool, which you can check here. Let's feather that out. Feather it until it looks about right. And then we're going to set the mode to screen. And we're finished. Alright guys, see you next week. Just kidding. Alright, but it is looking pretty cool so far. So one layer applied and it's already looking pretty good. So let's see. Next step is figuring out where the timing of this should come in. So as you see, he's building up and powering up. You want it to feel like it's coming up as he's standing up, so it's kind of in sync. It feels organic. And to kind of add to the effect of it just kind of fading in, let's add a little opacity keyframe. And on this second keyframe, let's add easy ease in, so it gradually ramps up. You know what, let's bring this back here. And this is kind of at this point, this is a creative choice kind of thing. So I'm going to play with just where this lines up. Ah, there we go. Sweet spot. So actually it makes more sense for him when he's going down with his arms, because that looks like that's when the energy is being released. Perfect. That already looks pretty cool. All right, so next step. What's missing here? As you can see, so it looks like he has energy particles around him, but there's no atmosphere or anything being affected. So let's do that next. All right, so this Krakatoa layer has kind of a sandy distortion effect where it feels kind of like the ground around him is being affected, right? So let's use that and put that right below him. So we're going to use the same approach. We're going to select that bottom layer, select camera tracker, and let's select these guys, basically the same space again. Create a solid. All right, let's go back to our smoke layer here, replace. And this is a rinse and repeat approach to this. We're going to find out when it looks like it makes the most sense for this layer to be here. And this is going to be something that we actually are going to want to put behind and in front of him. And we'll get into that in just one second. You can kind of see a little overlap here where the two layers are intersecting. So what we're going to want to do is bring this smoke layer a little bit ahead of him. That way there's no intersecting. Bring this down. Scale it up and wider a little bit. And so the timing of this one's a little weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to slow this down so it's not at, because it's hard to line it up, as you can see with his movements. So let's slow this down to, say, let's try 5 seconds. As you can see, there is that little stutter. So what's going to help hide that is turning on motion blur and selecting motion blur on that layer. We still see a little bit, so let's throw a forced motion blur effect on that, and let's turn the shutter down, and it's already a lot smoother. All right, cool. So let's change the mode to screen as well. All right, so as you can see with this effect, it's kind of weird because the perspective is a little strange because it's in front of him, but we want it to look like it's directly under him. So what we're going to do on this layer specifically is we're going to actually mask out where his legs are. All right, so once you masked out his legs, let's go down to the masks, set these to subtract and subtract on both of those masks, and let's see. So now you can tell it looks like this layer is behind him, right? So let's feather both of those layers out to, let's say, 15. Nothing too crazy right now. All right, so that looks pretty decent. So now you can see it actually looks like the layer is behind him. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of manually have to keyframe this. So this is a little tedious. Again, I'll speed ramp it. You'll get the point. So the good thing is his legs stay pretty stationary, especially after the first little power up he does. So you can be pretty conservative on where you put the keyframes. All right, so now it's pretty good, and you can pretty much, it feels like it's sitting underneath him as opposed to just right in front of him. All right, so as I play through this, I'm realizing that layer we just added is a little sharper than the rest of the footage. So in order to correct that, let's just add a quick little Gaussian blur. You can find that in blurs, Gaussian blur, and let's just set that to 8. And as a good rule of thumb, pretty much it's always a benefit to repeat edges. So let's just check repeat edges, and let's see how that works out. Okay, that's definitely too much. Let's set that down to 4. All right, so the next step is going to be adding heat distortion, because as you see as it plays through here, it looks cool, it feels good, but something's missing. So let's give it that like hot feeling, and to do that we're going to use a new adjustment layer, new adjustment layer. And heat distortion is basically that effect that you see when you're on the highway on a hot summer day and you see that kind of flickery effect that's happening on the road due to the heat. So in order to find that or use that, go to Video Copilot and Heat Distortion. Again, the alternative would be if you have the Red Giant Universe suite, and you could use RG Universe Distort, and if you go in there, you see the heat wave effect. Both are awesome, but I recommend Video Copilots. It renders faster, and so anytime there's an option between what's faster and there's no loss in quality, I'm going with faster. All right, so basically we're going to take this adjustment layer and we're going to create a mask around Trunks that feels kind of dome-shaped. So let's do that. This can be any shape that you want it to be depending on your scene. Basically, we're going to block the heat effects from hitting Gohan and everything else, so it feels like it's specifically coming off of Trunks. We're just going to feather this. Let's do 120. We want this to be a really hard feather so you don't see a harsh line where we drew our mask. As you'll notice, we get these weird artifacts here on the edge of the frame when we apply heat distortion. Don't worry about that. We'll fix that later on by punching in just a little bit. Alright, so once we're in here, you have different effects in heat distortion, different presets such as fire, smoke, and incinerary. Each one has like a different intensity to it. For me, fire right out the gate works almost perfectly. I'm really not going to mess with too many of these presets in here for the sake of this, because as you'll see, it's pretty accurate as is. I might actually turn this down just a little bit, the heat amount and the heat distortion amount. So let's set distortion to 8. Let's set heat amount to, let's try 40. Let's make a keyframe on the distortion amount here, and then let's have it start here, and we'll zero this out. And let's do the same with heat amount. Make a keyframe and another keyframe. That way we zero everything out and it gradually ramps in as we did earlier. And let's do the keyframe assistant, ease in. And another trick, since this is so subtle, something I like to do, this is just a personal preference, I like to actually add a little bit of a tint to this layer. So let's go to Effects, Color, and I like to use Photo Filter and set it to, actually it's already default there, Warming Filter 85, and then we'll just turn this down to 12. I personally don't like this to, I just like a subtle little something. You know, do the same with this effect as well. Fade it in. Another keyframe. Easy ease in. Alright, so the next step we're going to do is adding another adjustment layer and start adding some more intensity to the scene. Alright, so adjustment layer. Let's create a mask. For the sake of time, I'm just copying my mask from the previous original version, and we're going to add Twitch. Again, another Video Copilot plugin. Alright, so let's set this to amount, set amount to 30. Set speed to, let's keep speed at 5, and then drop down enable, click color and light. Close that up, and let's go down to behavior and set seed to 7. Let's set this to 43 and this to, let's do 38. Let's actually feather that mask a little more. It's already set to 200, but let's try 350. We want that to be super soft. So as you can see, it gives it that kind of flicker effect. But this is kind of the overall feel for the whole shot. Let's actually make another adjustment layer where we add another Twitch layer. Alright, so let's duplicate this layer, this adjustment layer, and let's actually create a source where it feels like Trunks is the source of the energy and it's all radiating off of him. So in order to do that, we need to make our mask around him smaller. Let's see, let's just trim this portion at the beginning. Split. So what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to change the opacity, but I'm also going to turn down the effect. twitch is kind of weird because sometimes whenever you turn down the amount and expect it to ramp up smoothly, it kind of freaks out. So let's see how that responds. It creates this weird stutter effect that's not intentional sometimes. That looks pretty good. All right, cool. So onward. So we're actually almost done. So as we played it back last time, what I realized is I kind of want to see the heat distortion actually ramp up just a little bit. So let's go to that layer. Let's close everything else. Keep everything kind of organized here. All right, so let's go to our heat distortion layer. And as you see, it kind of starts building up. Let's get it a little crazy towards the end. So let's take this to 25 and 48. That way we feel progressively things are getting a little more chaotic. And as a rule of thumb, always do easy in or easy out. It creates a more natural ramp up effect. And let's do the same with the color so it feels like it's getting hotter as well as more distortion. Set that to 28. That might be a little much. But you know what? Let's just feather this out a little more. Alright, so as we play through this, it really is close to being done. The only thing that I feel like is still off is we don't have the debris, the ground below him isn't really being affected too much. So in order to fix that, let's go to our Action Essentials folder. I have a folder called Dust here. And let's use Dust 1. And so let's, again, rinse and repeat. Let's go to our bottom layer where we have our camera tracker. Let's select this area again. Right click, create solid. And let's replace that solid with Dust Wave 1. Again, hold Alt and drag this over your dust layer and it will replace it. The alternative to that is creating a null object, and I just find it significantly faster and it keeps my timeline a lot cleaner to do it this way. Oh shoot, Trunks is getting powered up. Alright, so right off the bat, let's fix the obvious issues. This is getting cut off by Gohan's leg, so let's mask this out. And because this camera is going to be moving, we're going to have to manually track that real quick. So let's just do that real speedy-like. So the good thing is Gohan doesn't actually move his arm or leg here. So this mask is actually pretty secure. So let's put a little bit of feather on that, maybe 8 pixels. And I think we can call that a day. That's awesome. Sometimes you get lucky. All right, so that's looking pretty good. We've got to color correct it because it doesn't match the environment. So color, go to tint. All right, so after you've selected tint, go to map white to, select your color dropper and select right here to get that sand color. And let's see how that blends. Sometimes the color will be so close that it actually almost makes the dust invisible. So then you just kind of have to either brighten it or darken it to your liking. So, and you know what? We're going to actually need to bring this below the adjustment layers, so it's also affected by the twitch layers. Alright, so now let's duplicate this layer. Let's bring this down underneath the Trunks layer that we wrote out earlier. And so now you can see the dust is also behind him. And let's stagger this just slightly. And let's slow it down a little bit. Let's set this to 9 seconds. And so that it's not the same asset, let's actually swap that out with something else. Alright, let's replace that layer with Dust Wave number 8. As you see, this timing needs to be adjusted a little more. So let's set this to 8. And let's actually give that motion blur. Alright, and then the next step will be right when we see that wave come in, right there, let's actually take Dust 1, let's duplicate that, and slide that down. And that way more dust fires up as we see that dust wave or that energy wave come up. The whole key is making it feel like the environment is being affected by the fake effects. And let's speed this up a little bit so it actually feels like it's reacting in real time. Let's turn this down to 5 seconds. And let's shift this down just a little more. All right, and now lastly, what we're going to want to do is let's select everything, right click, pre-compose, move all attributes into composition, and let's take this layer. All right, go to effects, RG Universe Utilities, Camera Shake. All right, so the reason I really like to do this is even though we've already motion tracked everything and it's all in sync and it's lined up together, this adds a little bit of extra energy and intensity to the shot. We can add a little shake that we didn't want to do with the camera on set because we didn't want to add any extra shake that would make it harder to track the footage. So it's always, for us, it's a good rule of thumb to keep the camera as still as possible, and then in post add things like camera shake to really punch up the intensity. So what's cool about camera shake is inside of here we have a bunch of really cool presets that give you different styles of energy. So we don't want anything too crazy like running or earthquake, but let's start with Shaky Cam. It gives it a little bit of an erratic feel, but we're going to turn that down a lot. So let's start off with 50%. Let's turn motion blur on medium. Make sure tile edges are checked. Let's also scale up your footage to 110 so there's no mirror issues happening here on the edges. That also fixes that weird artifact we were having because of the heat distortion earlier. Alright, so that just rendered out, so let's play this back and see how it looks. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, that camera tracker, or that camera shake really brings this to life. It really adds the epic action kind of feel, the intensity. It kind of gives it that, you know, chaotic feeling. We could slow it down at the beginning. Everything's subjective. You can tweak all these things that we've done today to your own liking. But I think for the sake of a tutorial, this pretty much covers it. Alright guys, so I hope you found this video helpful. We really enjoy making these tutorials. We plan on doing a lot more like this. If you found this fun or entertaining or useful in any way, make sure you hit the like button, share, subscribe, leave a comment below. Let us know what you want us to make tutorials about next. In the meantime, if you enjoy our content, check out our Patreon or check out robotunderdogshop.com. Any and all support is greatly appreciated. And until next time, see ya.